إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So carrying on then from where we left off last week, which was regarding the resurrection and the evidences regarding the resurrection. The final thing we had left before moving on to the next chapter was regarding the different types of people who reject the resurrection. There are many types of people out there who reject the resurrection. One of those groups are the ones who absolutely reject it. الطائفة الأولى المنكرون مطلقا. Those who reject the resurrection in an absolute manner. وهم المشركون وبعض الفلاسفة. And they are the polytheists, the mushrikun, and some of the philosophers, their likes. They reject that there will be any type of resurrection. And we already mentioned some of the evidences regarding that. Allah mentioned in the Quran, زعم الذين كفروا أن لن يبعثوا قل بلى وربي لتبعثن ثم لتنبؤن بما عملتم وذلك على الله يسير. That the disbelievers, those who disbelieved, they claim that they will not be resurrected. Rather, by my Lord, say, you will certainly be resurrected. Say to them, by my Lord, you will certainly be resurrected, and then you will be made aware of what you did, and that is easy upon Allah. Then there are another group, الطائفة الثانية. There's another group of people out there, and this group, they reject the fact that your bodies will be resurrected, but they believe only your souls are resurrected. المنكرون للمعاد الجسماني والمثبتون لمعاد الأرواح. Some of them, they reject that our bodies will be resurrected, and they say only the souls are resurrected. وهذا قال به طوائف من النصارى وبعض الفلاسفة المنتسبين للإسلام وهؤلاء كفرهم أهل العلم. Some of the groups of the Christians, they believe that the resurrection is only the souls. And there are some of the philosophers who claim an association to Islam who also make this claim. And the scholars of Islam declared them to be kuffar, disbelievers, for this belief of theirs, that only the souls are resurrected and the bodies are not. The third type, الطائفة الثالثة المنكرون لبعث الأرواح والمثبتون لبعث الأجساد. The other way around, the third group are the ones out there who affirm that the bodies will be resurrected, but they reject that the souls are resurrected. وهو مذهب بعض المتكلمين. And that is the methodology of some of those along the lines of the philosophers and their likes. And these are mentioned by Shaykh al-Islam and others in the books. The fourth type, الطائفة الرابعة القائلون بتناسخ الأرواح. The ones who say that you are reincarnated. like the Buddhists, or along those lines, those kinds of beliefs they have of reincarnation, tanasukh al-arwah. So they believe, the Buddhists and their likes, that the souls, they are reincarnated. The reincarnation occurs. And there are even some of those, وبعض وهذا هم البوذيون والهنادكة الهندوس, the Hindus and the Buddhists and their likes, they believe in the reincarnation. وبعض من ينتسب إلى الإسلام زورا وبهتانا. And there are some out there who claim to be Muslims and they have these beliefs. And of course, the scholars of the Muslims, they declared them to be disbelievers upon that belief, without a doubt. To believe in reincarnation, that is kufr. So these are the fourth type. فهؤلاء لا يقولون أن الروح ترجع إلى الجسد نفسه وإنما تنتقل من جسد إلى جسد. So they believe that the soul is reincarnated into a new body, and when that dies, reincarnated again into another body. حتى تصل إلى حد معين. And that carries on happening according to them, the reincarnation, one body to the next, up to a certain point. واختلفوا في هذا الحد. But then they differed over what that certain point is. Up until when does the reincarnation keep happening for a soul? فاختلفوا في هذا الحد. فاليهود يقولون إن وصلت إلى جسد يهودي فستصل الروح إلى السعادة المطلقة. The Jews, they claim that if the soul is reincarnated until it comes into the body of a Jew, then that's it. It will have the ultimate happiness after that. والنصيرية قالوا حتى تلتحق بالنجوم. And the Nusayriya, they say that the reincarnation carries on happening for that soul until it ends up in the stars. All types of deviated and misguided beliefs. وهذا القول كما ترى غاية في الجنون. There is no doubt that this is absolute craziness, these types of beliefs, that there is reincarnation and your soul ends up in the stars and whatever else. That then brings us to the end of the section regarding the resurrection. We now begin on the new topic, the new chapter, which is An-Nafkhu Fis-Sur. On the day of judgment, there is going to be the blowing of the horn. The blowing of the horn on the day of judgment, An-Nafkhu Fis-Sur. And that is alama min alamati sa'ah. It is a sign from the signs of the hour. وَالنَّفْخ. And in fact, that is the alamatul qiyamah. When the blowing of the horn occurs, that is the sign that the resurrection is now going to occur. وَالنَّفْخ. The blowing, that is known, إخراج الهوى من باطن الإنسان. To blow out, to blow, that is known to us. The blowing of the horn will occur. والصور. في الحديث أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم سئل عن الصور فقال قرن ينفخ فيه والصور كهيئة البوق. So it was asked to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم regarding this horn that is going to be blown into, and he mentioned it is like a horn, the shape of a horn, and that it will be blown into. وقد نعم. So that is the horn that is going to be blown on the day of judgment. Then the first issue to be mentioned here, the first mas'ala, man huwa an-nafikhu fi as-sur? Who is it that is going to blow into the horn? And that is, of course, as we know from the evidences, Israfil alayhi salam. the angel Israfil. He is the one who has been given the responsibility of blowing into the horn. The angel Israfil. الذي جاء في الأدلة الصحيحة تسمية النافخ في الصور بصاحب الصور. In the evidences, it actually only mentions صاحب الصور, the one who is going to blow into the horn. The one who is going to blow into the horn, without mentioning Israfil. فقد روي عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال: إن طرف صاحب الصور مذ وكل به مستعد ينظر نحو العرش مخافة أن يؤمر قبل أن يرتد إليه طرفه كأن عينيه كوكبان دريان. It mentions in this hadith that the sight of the one who is going to blow into the horn, ever since he was given that responsibility, the sight of that one is looking towards the throne of Allah, fearing that if he was to turn away at any moment, the command could come. The command could come from Allah at any moment to blow into the horn. So the one who has been given the responsibility is looking at the throne of Allah, anticipating any moment he may be given the command to blow into the horn, fearing that if he turns away, the command may come. So he is looking ever since he was given the responsibility to the throne of Allah, anticipating and waiting for the command to come to blow in to the horn. وجاءت تسميته بصاحب القرن. And so in that narration, it is mentioned the Sahibu Sur, the one who will blow into the horn. In other narrations, Sahibul Qarn, the same thing, the one who will blow into the horn, the one who is appointed with the horn. And that is mentioned in some of the narrations as well. كيف أنعم وقد التقم صاحب القرن القرن. In the narration it mentions the Prophet ﷺ said, how can I be at ease or in blessing knowing that the one who is going to blow into the horn has taken the horn in readiness. Has taken the horn, holding the horn in readiness to blow at any moment. So we see in these narrations that it mentions the Sahibul Sur, the Sahibul Qarn, but it doesn't mention Israfil by name, but we know it is Israfil alayhi salam, the angel who will do that. وجاء عند أبي يعلى وإسحاق بن راهويه والطبري والبيهقي في حديث الصور الطويل أن النافخ في الصور إسرافيل. There is a narration with Abu Ya'la and Ishaq ibn Rahoya, Tabari al-Bayhaqi, a long hadith about the horn, and in that narration it mentions that it is Israfil. لكن اعلم, but in any case, know أن العلماء قد أجمعوا على أن الذي ينفخ في الصور هو إسرافيل. This is by consensus of the scholars, by agreement of the scholars, that the one who will blow into the horn is Israfil alayhi salam. قال الإمام القرطبي قال علماؤنا والأمم مجمعون على أن الذي ينفخ في الصور إسرافيل عليه السلام. Al-Imam al-Qurtubi, he said that all of the scholars, everyone, they are in agreement, in consensus, that the one who will blow into the horn is indeed Israfil alayhi salam. وقال الحافظ ابن حجر, الحافظ ابن حجر, famous Fath al-Bari, the explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari, he said, اشتهر أن صاحب الصور إسرافيل عليه السلام. It is well known or widespread, it is widespread that the one who is going to blow into the horn is Israfil. ونقل أو نقل فيه الحليمي الإجماع. And he mentions how one of the scholars narrated there is a consensus upon that. So that is the first thing. There is a consensus upon the fact that it is Israfil alayhi salam who will blow into the horn on the Day of Judgment. Then, what are the evidences about the blowing of the horn in the first place? Where are the evidences this will happen? What are the proofs? Al-adillah ala al-nafkh fi as-sur وقد أتى بعدة ألفاظ, and there are many different wordings that have been mentioned, many different ayat that talk about the blowing of the horn. It's in the Quran in many places that this will occur. An example of that, وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَإِذَا هُمْ مِنَ الْأَجْدَاثِ إِلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَنْسِلُونَ. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ mentions here in Surah Yasin, ayah 51, and it will be blown into the horn. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ. Also, وَيَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ فَفَزِعَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ. That on the day when the horn will be blown. That's again clear in this particular ayah, Surah An-Naml 87. On the day when the horn will be blown. وَيَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ. In another ayah, Az-Zumar 68, وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَصَعِقَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى فَإِذَا هُمْ قِيَامٌ يَنْظُرُونَ. Again in this ayah, twice it mentions about the blowing of the horn and when the horn will be blown, and then later on when it is blown again. So these are multiple ayat in the Quran. There are others as well that are in reference to the blowing of the horn. For example, فَإِنَّمَا هِيَ زَجْرَةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ. The zajrah, that is talking about the blowing of the horn. فَإِنَّمَا هِيَ زَجْرَةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ. That in An-Nazi'at, ayah 13, is talking about the blowing of the horn. And also in Surah Qaf, 42 نعم يوم يسمعون الصيحة بالحق ذلك يوم الخروج. الصيحة, that is the blowing of the horn as well. النفخ في الصور, that is also in reference to that. So there are multiple evidences about the blowing of the horn that will occur on the Day of Judgment. That's the second issue done. Evidences that this will certainly occur. The third issue, المسألة الثالثة, how many times will the horn be blown on the Day of Judgment, on the resurrection? How many times will the horn be blown? عدد النفخات. How many times will the horn be blown? Anybody? Twice. Twice. Everybody saying twice? No other fatwa? Only twice? Ijma'? 3 times? So no ijma'. عندنا مخالف. So now we don't have any consensus anymore. We have 3 over there, we have 2 over here. How many times will the horn be blown on the day of resurrection? Twice. So, اختلف أهل العلم في ذلك على قولين. There are two opinions. Twice or 3 times. Some of the scholars say twice. Some of the scholars say it will be thrice. Some of them twice. Some of them say 3 times. Depending on the evidences they have. القول الأول أنها 3 نفخات. The first opinion, that it will be blown 3 times. The blowing of the horn will occur 3 times. That is the first opinion. وذهب إليه جماعة من أهل العلم. And there are a number of the scholars who took this opinion. كابن العربي ابن العربي كابن العربي المالكي وشيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية وابن كثير رحمهم الله. So there are a group of them like Ibn al-Arabi. Don't mix it up. There is another one, Ibn Arabi. That one, forget him. Ibn al-Arabi. This is the good one. So Ibn al-Arabi, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Kathir, they all take the opinion that it is 3 times. And قالوا إن هذه النفخات نفخة فزع ونفخة صعق ونفخة بعث. They said there are 3 types. The first blowing of the horn will create the fear into everyone. The terror and the fear will strike into everyone when the first blowing of the horn occurs. Then they say with the second blowing of the horn, everyone will fall dead. Who is left at that time? And with the third blowing of the horn, everybody is resurrected. That's what they say. Those 3 blowings of the horn. With the first blowing of it is the terror and the fright that occurs. The second blowing of it, everybody who is there at that time falls down dead. And the third is the resurrection that occurs. What's their evidence for these 3? They say the evidence that the first blowing is the faza'. وَيَوْمَ يُنْفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ فَفَزِعَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ. On that day when the horn is blown and then the terror and the fright occurs within all those in the heavens and the earth except whom Allah wills. That indicates the faza', that fright and terror that occurs. Then there's another ayah, وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَصَعِقَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ. That on that day when the horn is blown, then they are struck down. They are struck down, those in the heavens and the earth except whom Allah wills. Then ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى فَإِذَا هُمْ قِيَامٌ يَنْظُرُونَ. Then it is blown again and then they are resurrected looking. So those 3 ayat are talking about 3 different things. The first one is talking about the faza', the terror and the fright. The second one is talking about them being struck down with the second blowing. And then the third ayah is talking about resurrection when it's blown again. So that is 3 blowings of the horn altogether. That is their evidence. And there is also the long hadith that we spoke about with Abu Ya'la Ishaq ibn Rahoya. There is that hadith even though it's weak. In that one it mentions there are 3 blowings of the horn. The second opinion, القول الثاني أنها نفختان, that it will only be blown twice. It will only be blown twice. There will only be 2 blowings of the horn. وذهب إليه طائفة من أهل العلم كالقرطبي وابن حجر والشوكاني رحمهم الله. And there are a group of the scholars, famous scholars, Al-Imam Al-Qurtubi, Al-Imam Ibn Hajar, Al-Imam Al-Shawkani, famous scholars who took the opinion that it's only twice. What is their evidence? هؤلاء قالوا إن النفخة الأولى للفزع والصعق والثانية للبعث. They said the first blowing of the horn, that creates the fear and the terror and the striking down of the people. And then with the second one, that is when they are then resurrected. The second blowing of the horn is the resurrection. And the reason or the evidence they have to say that it is only twice when this occurs is because of the fact that the second ayah or the third ayah that said ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى. They said that ayah, when it says it will be blown into it again, أُخْرَى. When you say أُخْرَى in the Arabic language, it indicates two things. قالوا إن استعمال لفظة أخرى يدل على أن النفخات اثنتين فقط لأن لفظة أخرى لا يطلق على ما كان أكثر من اثنين في اللغة. They say linguistically the word أخرى, it is only used for something that is of the number two. If you have two things, then you say the first one and then you say the ukhra, the first one and the other one. So in that way, it indicates that there are only two of these, the first one, then the other one. So there are only two blowings of the horn in that case, the first one and the other one. So because of the word ukhra, they say it can only be two blowings of the horn, because if it was more than two, the word ukhra would not have been used. If it was more than two, the word ukhra would not have been used. Also, they have other evidences. They say يوم ترجف الراجفة تتبعها الرادفة. There it's talking about two again. The rajifa, then the radifa. Two only. So there are some scholars, based upon those evidences, they say it is only two times that the horn is going to be blown into. The next issue, so let's assume it is the two times. If it is two times that the horn is going to be blown into on that day, what is the gap between the first time and the second time then? What is the gap? When the first one is blown, how long then until the second time it's blown? How much of a gap is there in between the first time and the second time it is blown? That is the next issue to look at here. It is mentioned in a hadith. It is mentioned in a hadith. This is about the miqdar ما بين النفختين. ثبت في الصحيحين من حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: ما بين النفختين 40. قالوا يا أبا هريرة 40 يوما؟ قال أبيت. قالوا 40 شهرا؟ قال أبيت. قالوا 40 سنة؟ قال أبيت. In this hadith it mentions from the hadith of Abu Hurraira رضي الله عنه, that he narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that between the two blowings of the horn is a period of 40. between the two blowings of the horn is a period of 40. So they said to Abu Hurraira, the ones who heard the hadith from him, they said, "Oh Abu Hurraira, 40 days? You mean 40 days?" Abu Hurraira said, "I refused to acknowledge that." They said, 40 months then? He said, "I refused to acknowledge that, to affirm that." They said, 40 years? He said, "I refused to affirm or acknowledge that." So every time they kept asking him, "What do you mean? 40 what? 40 days? 40 months? 40 years?" Every time he refused to tell them. He refused to affirm and to acknowledge the answer. So all we have in the hadith, therefore, is Abu Hurrairah radiyallahu anhu mentioning that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ma bayna nafkhatayn arba'un." The gap between the two blowings of the horn is 40. ما بين النفختين 40. قالوا 40 يوما قال أبو هريرة أبيت 40 شهرا قال أبيت 40 سنة قال أبيت. He didn't tell them 40 days, 40 months, 40 years, 40 what? يقول الحافظ ابن حجر. So now then we need an explanation here. 40 what? 40 by itself doesn't mean anything. 40 what? Ibn Hajar said, زعم بعض الشراح أنه وقع عند مسلم 40 سنة. Some of the scholars who did the explanations of this hadith, they said there is a version of this hadith with Al-Imam Muslim, and in that version of Al-Imam Muslim it says 40 years. 40 سنة لكن لا وجود لذلك. That hadith doesn't exist. Search for it, you won't find it. There is no hadith with Al-Imam Muslim that mentions 40 years. نعم أخرج ابن مردوية من طريق سعيد بن الصلت عن الأعمش في هذا الإسناد 40 سنة. There is a narration from Ibn Mardoya, from the root or the chain of narration of Sa'id ibn Salt عن الأعمش, that says 40 years. There is a chain of narration mentioning 40 years, but that chain or that hadith is shadh. It is basically one of the categories of the weak narrations. وَمِن وَجْهٍ ضَعِيفٍ عن ابن عباس, and there is another chain of narration which is a weak chain of narration via Ibn Abbas. قال ما بين النفخة والنفخة 40 سنة. There's another chain of narration to Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma saying it is 40 years between the two blowings of the horn, but that is another weak narration. So that means we don't have any authentic narration telling us what the 40 means. وَكَأَنَّ أَبَا هُرَيْرَةَ. Why did Abu Hurraira not tell them? Why didn't he tell them when they kept asking him? He was the one who narrated the hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. مَا بَيْنَ نَفْخَتَيْنِ 40. So when they were asking him, "Oh Abu Hurraira, Ya Abu Hurraira, 40 سنة, 40 شهر." When they were asking him, "Abayt," why wouldn't he tell them? كأن أبا هريرة لم يسمعها إلا مجملة. Maybe Abu Hurraira, the Rawi, the narrator of the hadith, it is likely that he never heard anything more than just 40 from the Prophet ﷺ himself. If he had heard more than that and he had more detail than that, he would have told them. So maybe it's likely he himself never knew anything more than that. He just heard that between the two blowings of the horn there is going to be 40, but didn't know any more than that. He himself had not heard anything more than that. فَلِهَذَا قَالَ لِمَنْ عَيَّنَهَا لَهُ أَبَيْتَ. And that's why when they kept suggesting figures to him, is it 40 years, 40 months, 40 days? All of the times when they made the options for him, he kept refusing to agree, refusing to affirm, because he did not know. He did not know himself. And there is another narration, وقع في جامع ابن وهب 40 جمعة. In one narration it says 40 weeks. 40 weeks between the two blowings of the horn. But again, سنده منقطع. The chain of narration is not connected. So all of the hadith that seem to identify what the 40 means are all weak. So all we can say is that we know for sure that the gap between the blowing of the horn from the first time to the second time is 40, but we do not know 40 what? We do not know. It is not established or affirmed in the Sunnah more detail than that. That is the final topic regarding the blowing of the horn, the gap that exists between the two blowings. So in total here, the first topic was regarding who actually blows into the horn and the discussion regarding that, and that it is Israfil alayhi salam. The second point was the actual evidences from the Quran talking about the blowing of the horn is going to occur. The third point was how many times is it going to be blown, 3 or 2? And scholars take opinions on 3, some take the opinion on 2. And the fourth point was, what is the gap between the two blowings of the horn going to be? And the only authentic narration in that mentions that it will be 40, but it does not mention any details beyond that, what the 40 will be. Any questions up to there so far? Any questions on that section so far?
You know, the opinion regarding that the blowing will be 3 times was the first one you said to strike fear, and then what was the second one?
The sa'iq, they mention like to swoop away. The people will be swooped away. And then the third is when they will then be resurrected. That's what they mention with the ones who say it will be 3 times.
Is there a stronger opinion of the two?
It's very difficult to claim that there is a stronger opinion from those two, because you can see the evidences seem to indicate both. And especially when you've got people like Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Kathir taking one opinion, but then you've got people like Ibn Hajar and Shawkani and Qurtubi taking the other opinion. You can see it's a very difficult one to come to a conclusion on. Allahu Ta'ala A'lam. But the opinion that it's only twice seems to have some good weight to it, because of the ukhra thing, and also because of the hadith of Abu Hurraira. You could argue when it says ma bayna nafkhatayn, that there are only 2 blowings of the horn, but it doesn't necessitate it, because ma bayna nafkhatayn could be a nafkha al-ula wa thaniya thumma athaniya wa thalitha, ma bayna nafkhatayn. So you can argue both sides. It is very difficult to come to an outright conclusion on this. The evidences are there, so you examine them, you look at them, and then you come to a conclusion as to what it could be. Anything else? See, these things now, what if somebody says this is a proof that there is differing in Aqeedah? What if they say to you, this is a proof there's differing in Aqeedah? The Ikhwanis, the misguided individuals, they want to try to prove that you can have different aqeedah, no problem. They say, look at the big scholars differing in aqeedah. How do you explain that?
Is it because they all agree that the horn will be blown?
Because this is not from the usul of the aqeedah regarding whether it's twice or three times. The asl is that the horn will be blown on the day of resurrection. That is your aqeedah. The horn will be blown on the day of resurrection. Then there are branches of that aqeedah. One of the branches is it twice or is it three times? So nobody ever differed over the usul of aqeedah. If somebody came along now and said there is no blowing of the horn, now you could start saying there's a difference in aqeedah, but that doesn't exist. Doesn't exist, known and established between Ahlul Sunnah that the horn will be blown on that day. The number of times is then a secondary affair. It is not from the foundations of the belief that the horn will be blown on that day. Anything else? Well, that brings us to the next chapter. The next chapter we'll do it in proper detail from next week, obviously now. But just to briefly mention what that chapter is now going to be next week, it is going to be going along in a roughly chronological type of order. If the blowing of the horn has occurred, the next thing is then the actual resurrection. So now the chapter coming up is going to talk about the actual resurrection. How are the people actually resurrected? And there are many narrations about how the people will be naked, for example, and other things. And the kuffar are going to be resurrected upside down on their heads. There's a lot of narrations talking about the descriptions of how the resurrection will occur. And who the first person to be resurrected will be, and the descriptions of how the believers will be resurrected compared to how the disbelievers will be resurrected, and are the animals resurrected? All of these types of topics are going to be mentioned. And where does the resurrection happen? Is it on this earth or is it some other place? Where does the resurrection happen? Is it on this earth? After everyone dies, then they are all resurrected out of their graves on this earth. Or is the resurrection somewhere else? That will be discussed as well as one of the topics. Where will we all be resurrected? Where is that going to be? So all of these topics, inshallah ta'ala, then we'll begin that chapter next week. We should be able to finish the whole of that chapter next week. That will be the chapter regarding the resurrection. And then there are other chapters coming after that. There's going to be the chapter of the intercession. The intercession that occurs on the Day of Judgment. There is going to be the chapter of the books. The books, your writings, the angels are writing for you. The suhuf that everybody is going to be given. A chapter regarding what's going to happen with that. A chapter regarding Maji'ullah Jalla Jalaluh Lifasl al-Qada. A chapter regarding how Allah will come on that day to judge between the people. Then Al-Hisab, the chapter about the accountability and the weighing scales and your deeds. Then the chapter of the weighing scale, Al-Wazn, the weighing scale that your deeds are all put into and weighed up on that day. And then after that comes the chapter of Al-Hawd, the pond of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that day, and the cups and the water that it will have. Then As-Sirat, the bridge that you have to cross over the hellfire to get into either paradise or to get into paradise. And then the final chapter will be about paradise and hell. The final chapter in the belief in the Day of Judgment is about paradise and hell, because right at the end, the final thing is you are either in paradise or hell, and that is the final abode. So that's where it ends up in, right at the end, regarding paradise and hell. So there's quite a few chapters, and it's a very interesting topic when you look at each of those chapters When it comes to the bridge over the hellfire and all the descriptions about that, the pond of the Prophet ﷺ and where the water comes from for that pond and where that pond is, how big that pond is. There are so many things mentioned. We're going to cover all of them insha'Allah ta'ala. So that is where we'll conclude on today. Then we'll start